Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 22nd episode of the Guilty Pleasures Podcast, the home of No Holds Barred podcasting. Now, on this podcast, we do not shy away from controversy. In fact, we attack it head on. Ben, we hit controversy with a kill switch onto a steel chair.
Oof, that's tough for PG era WWE. Sounds extremely painful.
Yeah, the person receiving that, or controversy in this case, will certainly be bleeding hard here.
I expect that to be the case.
Yes. Ben, I am your host, John DeMedio, a.k.a. Johnny D, a.k.a. Freak V1, and I am here with my esteemed co-host, the great Benjamin Wolfgang. Ben, how's everything going besides meeting the fucking President of the United States this past weekend?
Right. Meeting him again, I will point out. But I'm doing well, and of course all of our listeners and now viewers can see that we are here live and live in color, because just hearing us talk we decided was not enough for all of you, so now you can look at us as well. John, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm in the holiday spirit. We'll touch on that a little bit later. A lot to talk about in WWE, that's for sure.
Absolutely. We went to Raw last Monday night.
One of the best Raws I've ever seen.
Which was pretty incredible, yes. We recorded live from the parking lot. It was raining the entire time, but we did the best we could. So you can check out that episode on SoundCloud and iTunes from this past week. But Ben, we're on episode 22 here. So to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in every single week. Thank you so much for promoting the podcast for us and telling your friends and family about it. And if this is your first time listening to the podcast or watching it, welcome. We think you're really going to enjoy it. A lot of people look forward to this every single week, and for good reason. We call it how it is. We do not shy away from anything. And we are very real. So I think we bring a fresh take on a lot of different things that maybe people are scared to do. So thank you, everyone, once again for tuning in. There are two ways you can get in contact with us to let us know how the show is going, what you might want to change, or what you think we're doing really well. You can reach us on Twitter at the GP Podcast. That's the GP Podcast. Or you can reach us by email, theguiltypleasurespodcast@gmail.com. So, Ben, anything else you want to add here before we get going?
No, I don't think so. Just once again, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to all of our listeners. If you have anything that you would like us to do to change in the new year as the Guilty Pleasures podcast moves along, as John said, feel free to reach out to us. We have thick skin, and we are able to handle criticism like men, as we hope most of you are as well.
Absolutely. And really quickly, a couple things I'd like to mention. We do have a Cage Side Seats article coming up that we are writing that is going to be very good. Basically, our 10 things that we would love to see WWE give us, the fans, for the holidays. And next week is going to be our year-end show, sort of a best of the year for us throughout the first 22 episodes of the podcast, along with our year-end takeaways on things. So if you know anyone that hasn't listened to the podcast yet, or if this is your first week listening to it, this is a great time to be coming in because next week you'll be able to get sort of a summary of everything that we've been talking about, the best of, so to say. So this is a great time to come in. So please tell everyone you can about it. This would be the perfect week for them to hear and see our podcast.
Of course, next week we will be giving out our Scumbag of the Year. We'll build upon our very popular Scumbag of the Week segment. We'll pick one unlucky winner out from this group of terrible individuals that we've highlighted over the past 22 weeks. So certainly stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. That's going to be a tough one for us, man.
It's a close race.
Yeah, it is. It is. So for our loyal listeners that have listened from day one, please tweet us. Let us know who you think should be our Scumbag of the Year. Any advice we could get or our opinions would be greatly appreciated. But Ben, why don't we hop right in to our WWE segment here? Like I said, we went to Raw last week. Our wrestling segment from last week was a review of the TLC pay-per-view. But we went to Raw last week, and it was like you had said, it was one of the best episodes we've seen in a very long time, so we were very happy that we could be there and be a part of it. And really the main thing was that, well, two. One, that Vince McMahon came back.
As predicted by me.
Which Ben did predict, which I can't believe. I feel like he had to have some sort of inside information. And that Roman Reigns finally won the WWE World Heavyweight Championship on Raw, a free show, by the way, which is pretty incredible. And you and I have been saying that they need to start doing this just a little bit more to keep us engaged. So, but Raw was last night from this past week. And, we usually do a segment here with WWE where we give our 5 big takeaways from Monday Night Raw. So we're going to hop into that here. The first big takeaway for episode 22 of the Guilty Pleasures podcast is that, well, as I just mentioned, that Roman Reigns won the World Heavyweight Championship. And sort of, where does everyone go from here, Ben? What are they setting up? What foundation are they laying from now until the Royal Rumble to see where everyone goes? Because there is a lot of time between now and the Royal Rumble. This is going to be like a 5 or 6 week build that they're going to have. So, they certainly have a lot of time to make, decide on a good direction for all of these characters and to really get us engaged in the storylines. This is not something that they have to rush. So, where does Roman Reigns go from here? Is he truly over with the fans, Ben? Where do you see him overall right now and, in terms of his growth? And, where do you see him and who do you see him fighting at the Rumble?
Well, as far as who he fights at the Rumble, I expected it to be a rematch against Sheamus. That seemed to make a lot of sense to me. I still kind of think they'll probably end up going that route just because I'm not sure who else it really could be unless a Cena or Lesnar comes back and wants to challenge for the world title at the Royal Rumble. So, but as far as Reigns more broadly, John, look, I think you and I were both surprised last week by the reaction that he got in Philadelphia. A Philadelphia crowd that buried him back in January at the Royal Rumble. Look, you got to give the devil his due here. The crowd was pretty hot for Reigns. It came across, at least in the section that we were in, a little bit better than it did on TV. The crowd was a little bit more split than it seemed live when I went back and listened to it afterward. But there's no doubt about it that I think the majority of the fans were solidly behind Reigns. He got a great reaction when he confronted Stephanie, got a great reaction in the segment with Vince, got a great reaction when he beat Sheamus and captured the world title. So in some ways I'm happy for Reigns because I don't dislike the guy. I know you don't either. I think he's a good quality wrestler. I think he can be a major part of the roster for the next 10 years, quite frankly. But we objected to the fact that they had sort of pushed him down our throats and tried to get him over by all means necessary. But look, in the end, I think you said it after we saw the title change, Vince wins. He got it. He had to come out and personally involve himself to do it. Certainly that got some heat on him and allowed Reigns to get the upper hand on him with the Superman punch in the world title match. So that went a long way, I think, to getting Reigns over with the fans. There's no doubt in my mind, John, at this point, he goes on to WrestleMania with the World Heavyweight Championship. And judging by the reaction that he got last night, it seems the WWE Universe, by and large, is on board with that.
Yeah, which, like we said, it seems like a miracle because a month ago or a month and a half ago, you and I continually said that getting Roman Reigns over as a face would not work. Right. It just would not work for the way they had built him up to that point. And so, we were looking for him to maybe turn heel, and it didn't happen. And you got to give WWE a lot of credit that they fucking did it against all the odds. Their booking from the end of TLC to the end of last week's Monday Night Raw that we attended was brilliant. Yeah. It really was. It was, it showed that they are still capable of doing something good, which I think is really important because we needed that. We needed to see that because we were seriously questioning whether they could do a good storyline ever again.
Right. I think a lot of people were judging by the ratings for the few weeks before that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you saw that this past week ratings skyrocketed that the Raw we were at and this past week. So a great job by the WWE for sure. But look, in regards to where he goes and who he faces at the Royal Rumble, I think, and I've seen this mentioned before, maybe in an article or two elsewhere, but I totally agree with this, that I think Sheamus should have his rematch against Roman Reigns, at the first episode of SmackDown that airs on the USA Network. I believe that's around January 7th, sometime around there. But, USA is going to want that episode to get great ratings. It's the first one, on that station. And what better way to get great ratings than to have a rematch for the World Heavyweight Championship?
Yeah.
Promote it for a week or two on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. And I think you'll get great ratings for that. Not only for that episode, but that will have a ripple effect, I believe, for maybe a month or two down the line from that point, because people will be saying to themselves, hey, maybe the title will be defended on SmackDown once in a while, which is really all you need to keep people's interest. But because of that, if they do go that route, I think that they are setting up Roman Reigns Triple H at the Royal Rumble. I know that would be a great match to save until WrestleMania, but if they're going to keep the title on Reigns, I don't know if his match with Triple H will be a title match.
Right.
And if it's not, you need Roman Reigns to defend the title at WrestleMania.
There's no question.
So if he's going to be facing Triple H and the title's not on the line, I think the Royal Rumble is a great time to do it.
Or if you had, not to interrupt, John, if they had the title on the line, I think that would kind of kill the suspense at WrestleMania, because we all know Triple H probably is not going to win the World Heavyweight Championship.
That's a great point. A great point. So I think doing it at Royal Rumble is the right move. Like I said, I think they still have about 5 weeks to build this up, 4 or 5, so that's plenty of time. There's a lot of heat already on Triple H, so they're good there. One other thing I'd like to say, then this is to the WWE, because I actually watched SmackDown this past week, since it was the first episode of WWE television where Roman Reigns was the champion. So I thought that it might be a very good SmackDown, because maybe he'd have some interaction with the Authority or something like that. It was okay. But that episode of SmackDown and this episode of Raw, they haven't, there's been some interaction with the Authority, but it hasn't been maybe as sort of maybe urgent as you think it might be. I feel like Stephanie McMahon isn't taking dramatic measures to make sure that Reigns doesn't have the title anymore, or maybe he gets fired or whatever they want to do to him. And I think it's absolutely vital that the WWE keeps this momentum going that they had with Reigns from TLC and the Raw that we went to, and they can't sit on the fact that, hey, we did it.
Right.
We got him over and that's it. We don't need to put a lot of effort into it anymore. They have to keep pushing it. They have to keep making him look more defiant and more badass, and make sure that he keeps growing and not to resort to past mistakes. Like, don't think it's okay now to give him long promos, make him do bad jokes, make him smile all the time just because you had success for 2 nights and getting him over.
No, I think it's a great point. In fact, I think we saw a little bit of an evolution in his character, hopefully for the long term, last night. He seems to be kind of embracing more of this silent, almost stoner kind of character, where he's just, a little bit cocky, kind of disregarding everything the Authority says, and just sort of a whatever, fuck you attitude, and then backing it up physically in the ring and outside the ring when he has to. And I think that works for his character largely.
Right, and no, I agree. I still think he smiles too much.
He does smile too much.
And it's kind of annoying. I agreed with Stephanie when she kept telling him to stop smiling. I was like, yeah, I kind of fucking agree with you. It comes off the wrong way to me. And my World Heavyweight Champion, my big-time guys in the company, I want to see them take everything extremely seriously. I don't want them joking around, about something, where their job is on the line, or their boss is yelling at them. That's not what Austin would have done. No. He just would have came out and stunned Vince McMahon, or he would have been pissed off right back in his face. He wouldn't have smiled things off and made it all to be this big joke. So I do want to see him kind of eliminate that, for sure.
I think that's true. And maybe with time, that seems to kind of be his just comfort zone, sort of a defense mechanism. He maybe doesn't know what to do or is feeling uncomfortable. He just kind of goes back into that mode and starts smiling. So hopefully over time, he'll kind of get over that, and WWE can help him move on to something else. Sort of the main foil, John, moving on to our next takeaway here for Roman Reigns and for Dean Ambrose, I guess, at this point, is the League of Nations. Sheamus, Barrett, Alberto Del Rio, and Rusev, with Lana, I guess, as their collective valet. So the League of Nations formed a couple weeks ago, not all that long ago, but look, I was kind of wondering how this group was going to go forward without Sheamus as the champion. It seemed like it had been formed as sort of Sheamus' stable. He's still the leader, but now without the World Heavyweight Championship around his waist, the group has a little bit less cachet, I think, going forward. Now, they did sort of go into NWO territory last night on Raw, attacking people in the back, laying out the Usos, laying out other WWE stars. So I like that. We've been talking about needing to have some more backstage segments of people getting laid out. I think that goes a long way in building some tension on the episode. But I do wonder about them moving forward. I mean, Sheamus lost a steel cage match to Dean Ambrose last night on Raw, and you had the entire League of Nations basically get decimated at the end of the show by Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose. So kind of to an extent, John, a lot of the work they'd done to build up this group as a legitimate threatening heel stable was kind of undone by the end of the show. And so I'm not sure exactly where this stable is going to go. I mean, are they going to continue to be a force even if Sheamus doesn't have the world title? And how exactly do you think they need to be booked going forward? I mean, unless you just plan on scrapping the whole thing within the next month or two.
I don't think they should scrap it. I mean, first of all, I have to say that this is exactly what they should, minus the end of the show, but this is exactly what they should have done with the Wyatts.
Oh, yeah.
And, we explained that on our article on Cage Side Seats, which was featured, by the way, and many weeks on this show, that this is exactly what they should have done to the Wyatts to make them look strong, of course, minus them getting crushed by Reigns. But yeah, I think they could absolutely be a dominant, mid-card, upper mid-card stable, for sure, if they're booked right. But I don't think they are a dominant top-of-the-card stable. I just don't think that's realistic because you don't have a guy in that stable that is extremely credible. I still don't think Sheamus is credible. Or, at least like top of the food chain credible. So I think it's great, though. I actually like when they're stables. And I've talked about this before because I think you give guys that maybe have no direction at least something to do, something to be a part of. So I definitely think they should keep this going just to see what can happen. But maybe book them a little bit more to the upper mid-card. Maybe eliminate, like, Barrett from the equation. I don't know if they need 4 guys if they are going to just be battling mid-card guys. Do you know what I mean? Because then if they get beat or toppled somehow, it wouldn't be realistic since there's 4 of them. Maybe you take one away. I'm not sure how you do that, but I think it's definitely worth it to keep it going and just to see where it goes because we've talked about this before. Hey, if it doesn't work, just stop it.
But no, that's the thing. You're absolutely right. I mean, look, you mentioned Barrett especially. I mean, Barrett was doing nothing. He had become a joke, as we had talked about in this show many, many times, despite the fact that he was the king of the ring this year, which is kind of an embarrassment on WWE's part. But to have him in the group associated with heels that are higher on the card than him, have a lot more credibility than he does, I think that's good for his career and potentially could establish him as a solid mid-card heel, which is what I think he should be to begin with. The problem is, as you mentioned, I think this is a stable of 4 mid-card heels. Even though Sheamus was just the World Heavyweight Champion, I still don't see him in the sort of John Cena, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns territory in terms of Seth Rollins, main event caliber guys. He's just not there. Maybe if he had the championship for longer, he would have been there, but at this point, he's not. So I'm not sure how you book it going forward. They do need to have the Sheamus and Reigns rematch, John. That needs to happen at some point. I wonder if they just kind of want to get that out of the way and have Reigns move on to something else and have the League of Nations move on to something else. But judging by what I saw on Raw last night, there wasn't really any interaction between Sheamus and the League of Nations and Roman Reigns until the end. The match when Reigns came out and laid them all out. So you didn't see Sheamus come out and cut a promo about how upset he was about what had happened the week before and how he lost his World Heavyweight Championship. There really was none of that. I didn't get the sense that he was out looking for revenge. I'm not sure why the League of Nations, for example, didn't try to find him backstage and lay him out instead of just waiting for him to come out and kick their asses at the end of the show. So I think a little more clarity in the motivations of exactly what this stable is trying to accomplish going forward could go a long way towards helping them too.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And the SmackDown episode that I talked about after the Raw where Roman Reigns won the championship, Sheamus came out, but he didn't talk about how pissed off he was about losing the title, which I thought was really interesting. He more or less was talking about the authority and talking about the fact that, Reigns laid out Triple H and all this stuff, that he was sort of acting on their behalf instead of having a little bit of his own identity and saying, this is bullshit that you took my title, it was a fluke, I want my rematch, blah, blah, blah. All he did was send security to the ring and try to get Roman Reigns escorted out of the building, which of course didn't work out.
Right.
But yeah, I think you're right. They need some more clear intentions here, especially because there aren't many four-person stables in the WWE right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they do book him. But I think this would be an opportunity, like you said, to have Sheamus try to zero in on Reigns here, have the other guys in the League of Nations just kind of be his sidekick, at least just for now. And
Right.
then eventually, maybe after this feud, you kind of give each one of them their own little thing where the group supports them. But I think right now it should all be centered around Sheamus.
I agree. They are kind of involved in disparate feuds, kind of outside of the group. Alberto Del Rio and the Jack Swagger feud that seemed to exist kind of off in its own corner. So I think having them a little bit more unified in terms of purpose would probably be a good thing.
Absolutely, Ben. Briefly want to mention this before we move on, and it's a good segue into our next point here. But Sheamus and Dean Ambrose did wrestle in a cage match on Raw in the main event. And yeah, I thought it was pretty good. In the beginning, the crowd was chanting "This is boring" to the "This is awesome" chant, and that was a shame. But I kind of agree with them. I think it started slow. It did really start slow, and I think the episode of Raw in general was very slow overall. Not a lot of things really happened up to that point. I think having the slammies mixed in, it just I don't know. Overall, it was kind of a sluggish Raw, but from that point on, when the crowd said that, the cage match was pretty incredible. I mean, there were two incredible spots in that cage match where Dean Ambrose did a flying elbow off the top of the cage.
Of the elbow.
Which was insane. And Sheamus did the white noise off the top of the turnbuckle. That was pretty incredible. So overall, I thought the cage match was pretty damn good. Right. And it ended up being a very good main event for Monday Night Raw for sure. But speaking of Dean Ambrose, Ben, he now is the current Intercontinental Champion. But he is still associated with Roman Reigns, as we saw when Reigns came out and threw him a chair, and then they decimated the League of Nations going off the air on Raw this past week. So, in your opinion, I mean, where is this relationship headed between the two of them? Is there a possibility, maybe, that WWE is setting up a Reigns versus Ambrose championship match, maybe 2 titles on the line, something like that, something similar to what they did with Seth Rollins and John Cena? Could this be at WrestleMania? I mean, what are your thoughts on Ambrose and his relationship with Reigns?
I'm open to the idea of that being a WrestleMania main event. I mean, certainly. We've gone over some of the other possibilities, and none of them really kind of grab us. A Lesnar-Reigns rematch, I don't know, Reigns-Cena, Reigns-Triple H. I think a Reigns versus Ambrose match could be very exciting. They could play off all the history they have together. I expected, John, coming off of last week, that these two would kind of remain friends but sort of go their separate ways. I thought Ambrose would probably continue a feud with Kevin Owens. I thought Reigns was going to move in full time to this feud with the Authority / the League of Nations. But look, I mean, the ending of Raw confirmed the fact that WWE, for whatever reason, is continuing to associate these two guys together. Yeah. Even though Reigns is now the world champion, Ambrose now the IC champion, they're still joined at the hip at all times. And as you well know, and as all of our listeners know, friendships in pro wrestling do not last. They always end. This can only go on for so long. And I've actually been kind of impressed with WWE in a way that they haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. I know there have been times we've suggested that maybe they should.
Right.
I mean, they often have a little bit too itchy of a trigger finger in WWE and don't give things enough time to sort of build and percolate on their own. But they are this time. So if they actually do have a plan for either turning one of these guys heel or maybe even just having a babyface on babyface matchup, a la The Rock and Steve Austin from WrestleMania 17, where the heat and the personal animosity between the two of them just gets to such a degree that they have to have a match against each other, even though they're still both babyfaces. I hope that's what they're doing, and I hope that there is just not this belief in WWE that Ambrose is only suited to be a sidekick and that Ambrose is always going to be second fiddle, sort of little brother to Roman Reigns. I hope that's not the case because I don't believe it. I don't think most of the fans believe it. I think most of the fans believe he can be a main eventer in WWE. Well, I mean, what do you think, John? I guess the main question is, do you think they even have a plan for what they're doing with these two, or is it just still kind of in a holding pattern until they figure out what they're doing with Dean Ambrose?
Yeah, no, I don't think they have a plan. I don't. It's just, I don't think they do. They should. That's for
Yeah.
sure. But you know, it seems like from a lot of the things that we've heard recently that WWE has been making a lot of its big decisions sort of on the fly, even just a couple hours before the show.
Right.
So, you know, just based off of that, which is the information that we have, I have to assume that they don't have a big plan in mind for this or a long-term plan. But really quickly, I want to address what you said, maybe having them face off at WrestleMania, two faces against each other. I don't know if that would work with the whole personal animosity thing because I don't think that they would have enough time to build that up to WrestleMania where these two guys, you know, just sort of didn't like each other or didn't get along even though they're both faces. Because we've seen for so long that these two have been associated with each other and friends, really since they came onto the scene in The Shield. They've always been like that. I don't think you can sort of change that narrative,
Right.
you know, maybe with 2 months or 3 months to go to WrestleMania. You know, because I think the Rock Austin comparison was good, but The Rock and Stone Cold had a lot of history before they were both faces and wrestled at that WrestleMania. So it's a little bit different because, you know, they were enemies for a lot of the time, so people could revert back to that. They could show packages about that. They couldn't really do that with Reigns and Ambrose. But in terms of match quality, I think it would be pretty good. I know we got that main event before Sheamus cashed in, and you know, they didn't get enough time. I think the match disappointed a little bit between those two. At least it did for me. I think it did for you as well. So it would be great to see them have one more match where they got a lot of time in the ring. And you're right, maybe they did have a little bit of a feud going on. I think that would be very hard for WWE to do. And look, we had said they had the perfect opportunity to turn one of these two guys heel. They had the perfect opportunity and they didn't do it. So it's hard for me to see them doing it in the near future to make something work. But I do like Ambrose as IC champion right now. I think he's a good fit for it. But, you know, like we had talked about, they need to make sure that he is highlighted. And if you make him just Roman Reigns' sidekick, or helping him out with his title and not really paying attention to his own,
Right.
it's not going to legitimize the IC title. It's going to put it on the back burner, and that's exactly what you don't want to do. So hopefully they highlight Ambrose, and I still think, and you and I have talked about this a bunch, and then we can move on after I get your thoughts on this, they still need to tweak his character.
Agreed.
And, you know, it's just not, you can't take him fully seriously as being a main event contender until they tweak it a little bit. And until the announcer stops saying that he is the craziest guy on earth and he has no idea what he's doing, that's absolutely absurd.
It really pisses me off, quite frankly, because it just seems like they don't have a grasp on what Dean Ambrose character is and could be. I mean, like he's not a schizophrenic. You know, he doesn't have a mental illness.
Right.
He's not insane. You know what I mean? He's just a cold, calculating, sort of quirky, eccentric, you know, hard to predict kind of guy. But it doesn't mean he's insane. I mean, to me, he's sort of a Brian Pillman kind of Mick Foley, Terry Funk, where he might do some ridiculous things that you didn't expect. But again, it doesn't mean that his brain is mush and he can't think for himself. So that kind of upsets me about Dean Ambrose, because I think that kind of leads to the crowd maybe not taking him as seriously as they could, because you present him as not a joke, but sort of just not as serious as a guy like Roman Reigns, to be honest with you, John. So I've got a problem with that.
Right.
I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to fix it anytime in the immediate future. But moving on here, John, speaking of things that we're not sure if they're going to fix or how they're going to handle moving forward, the Divas division has been a key topic since the start of this show. We're going to talk about it again here, and I'll get your thoughts on this, John. So we had Becky Lynch last night get a win over Brie Bella on Monday Night Raw. Charlotte was in her corner. And, you know, just some more just sort of quasi-heel actions by Charlotte here continuing. I mean, Becky Lynch hurt her arm in the match. Charlotte came in afterwards and tried to raise her arm up, and Becky, you know, almost seemingly doing it on purpose because her arm was hurt, and just generally acting a little bit cocky, trying to overshadow Becky Lynch at the end. So I think Charlotte as a heel is a good thing. I think she's a natural heel. I'm even okay, really, with Ric Flair being there, which might seem a little contradictory because I've had a problem with how much they promoted her as Ric Flair's daughter.
Right.
But I guess if you're going to do it, just go for it all out. If you're going to have her be a heel, have Ric Flair be there by her side. But I wonder what they do going forward. Are they building to an eventual match between a babyface Becky Lynch and a heel Charlotte, maybe at WrestleMania? Are they going to try to do a triple threat match and bring Sasha Banks in? Because I know you and I both think she needs to be in the Divas title picture sooner than later. I'm not sure sort of what the long-term plan is here. I know you mentioned last week on the show the fact that there are no baby faces really in the entire Divas division besides Becky Lynch. So you're either going to need to have her in the main event Divas title picture or create a new baby face, maybe a Sasha Banks. But I mean, I will say this: there are a lot of questions and there are a lot of roads WWE can go down right now with the Divas division. Are they handling Charlotte the right way right now, in your view? And
no,
for that matter.
No, they're not. I don't think, just going off of what you just said, I don't think Charlotte versus Becky Lynch would happen at WrestleMania. I just don't think that's a big enough match. But I think that should happen at the Royal Rumble. Because, look, let's face it, Sasha Banks and Team Bad have been pretty much irrelevant the last month. They had Sasha Banks win a couple matches on Raw, a few weeks ago or a month ago, but then they seem not to do anything with it. Now they just had Team Bad, sitting in the crowd and doing all that stuff. So I'm not sure what they're doing with her, but, look, you still have 4 or 5 weeks. Build this up and have your Charlotte versus Becky Lynch match because, look, I have no idea what's going on with them. I really don't. It seems like they change their mind each week on what they want to do. Either Charlotte does something very obvious, but then maybe she doesn't do something at all, or it's just something extremely small. They need to make it more clear, and I think they need to do it ASAP.
I was going to say, do the fans know right now, in your view, if she's a heel or a baby?
No, and no, because of it, the crowd can't get emotionally invested. And look, I think overall, and I just want to touch on this real quick, the Divas division is horrible right now, and the fans haven't been into a Divas match in so long. I can't remember the last time fans were really into one, and I think that's because we don't know who to cheer for. And we have no idea, and we have no idea what's going on. It just, I don't understand what they're doing. I don't understand where they're trying to go with this. And I noticed this week on Raw, and I have to bring this up too, that I don't know why Brie Bella is wrestling more than anyone else on the roster, it seems like, for the last month.
And rarely winning, as she's doing it.
Right, but she's clearly not even close to one of the top divas in the division, yet they're featuring her in very long matches. And it's not that she's actually controlling the action in a lot of these matches, where she is ahead in the match, per se, for a lot of the match. So it doesn't make sense to me that you're highlighting someone who we can both say isn't great in the ring, and you're making her go on the offensive most of the time when you have so many divas that are incredible ring workers and they're not getting that time to showcase their stuff. It seems like Becky Lynch is just getting a couple moves in each match and then going to her finisher, and that's it. When they should be highlighting her skill set, in my opinion, and trying to protect Brie Bella and people like that. Is Brie Bella a face right now? We have no idea. Is she a heel? We have no clue. We don't. What is Team Bad right now? We don't know what they are really.
It's sort of in this middle, just this mushy middle land right now, where nobody kind of knows. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes they try and present Team Bad as baby faces, but then they cheat to win all the time. So I mean, the booking of the Divas division, John, has just been a complete mess, I think, right now.
Right, and look, the solution to this is extremely clear, man. It's make it very clear who the faces are, make it very clear who the heels are, and then put the best wrestlers that you have in the Divas division into a match at WrestleMania and make it an unbelievable NXT-type classic match that they put on. And, if it's a fatal four-way between, Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Sasha, Paige, or maybe Bayley, then that sounds great. But make sure that each of these superstars that are in the match are either heel or face, and we know that going in, and put the best ones in the ring to showcase them at the biggest show of the year and give them a lot of time to do it. And I think coming out of WrestleMania, you will have a better idea of where the Divas division will go after, putting on a classic match, because we really haven't seen a classic Divas match yet during this Divas Revolution, which to me is very disappointing, especially since we've seen 2 of them on NXT during that time. I mean, are you disappointed about that, and what do you think they could do at WrestleMania?
That's kind of, you hit the nail on the head. That's one of the things that I'm most disappointed about, really from all of the divas that have come up, Charlotte, Becky Lynch, and Sasha Banks. For whatever reason, and we've talked about this before, I'm not sure what the answer is, but the match quality just hasn't been there compared to what it's been in NXT. I don't know if that's just maybe the lack of a storyline behind the match is part of it. That just, because NXT, as you know, as we talked about, has done a stellar job of actually, putting forward a storyline that people care about. That's easy to understand. So when you get to the big match like a Sasha versus Bayley, there are stakes on the line, and it's easy to get emotionally invested. That hasn't been the case with the divas on the main roster. So I think that kind of spills over into the matches themselves. And if you're not emotionally connected, even if the physical activity in the ring is exactly the same, the match is not going to come across as well or feel as important to you. So
Right.
I think that's part of it. So I think solving that problem, if you solve that problem, I think a lot of the in-ring questions might sort of, to at least some degree, kind of take care of themselves, I guess, John, going forward. As for WrestleMania, I mean, to me, I think a triple threat would be a way to go, unless you're planning on having another triple threat championship match. I like a Charlotte, Becky Lynch, and Sasha Banks triple threat match at WrestleMania. Again, if there is a legitimate storyline that's actually been building for a couple of months, and it's not just a one-off where Sasha Banks gets thrown into the mix at the last minute because they realize they have to have her on the show or the fans are going to revolt. So, I mean, that they can't handle it that way. But if they actually devote some time into this and sort of nurture a long-term storyline, John, I think that would be my preferred course. But, I mean, and also Nikki Bella's coming back, too. So let's not forget that. At some point, she'll be back in the title mix, of course, looking to reclaim her title. So not sure if she's coming back as a babyface or a heel, but she's one more factor there in the equation.
Yeah, and maybe her coming back will give more clarity to the direction of Brie Bella. Maybe now that Nikki Bella's back, and if she's going to be, who knows, she might be a face coming back. We have no idea. But whatever she is, Brie Bella will certainly follow in her footsteps. So if they book Nikki Bella right, then we can assume, of course, what Brie Bella and Alicia Fox will be following her. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that, and we will surely attack this topic again on future episodes.
Head on.
Head on. Ben, our 5th topic here and takeaway from Monday Night Raw, and it's one of our favorite superstars, Dolph Ziggler. And I just want to talk about his current situation, where his career is right now. Dolph Ziggler isn't happy with where he is right now on the card. That's for damn sure. We all know this. His career up to this point, I think, has been very hit or miss. It's been, a little bit of up, a lot of and a little bit of down. But right now, it seems like he is feuding with Kevin Owens. Yeah. So, do you think this feud with Owens is a good move? Do you think it maybe could rejuvenate his career a little bit? And do you think that it's a good idea to incorporate, Ziggler's real-life frustration into a storyline here, to kind of give it more intensity and make it more realistic?
Yes, I do. I mean, the promos, you mentioned the first one was backstage on the WWE Network.
Incredible.
It was awesome. And he sort of continued in that vein. I was hoping maybe he would do that a little bit last night during the Slammy Awards when he presented an award. He didn't do that, which is kind of puzzling. But yeah, I think that's a great move. Look,
Ben, sorry not to interrupt you, but you know who did that? Kevin Owens.
What, exactly?
Right. He was like, this is bullshit that I didn't win this award. I'm better than everyone else. So that was interesting.
That's true. That's a very good point. So I guess they're kind of on the same wavelength to a certain degree there. But look, I mean, reality sometimes makes the best angle. And Dolph Ziggler can say that he hasn't been given the opportunities by WWE. The authority hasn't put him, in main event matches enough. They've kind of been burying him, making him give out Slammy Awards. As opposed to being, in the ring. So that's all true. So you can come out and say those things both in the storyline context and the smart fans will know that he's kind of speaking from the heart and actually believes that in quote-unquote real life as well. So, yeah, I think that's absolutely the way to go. God knows they don't have anything better for this guy to do right now. I mean, the Kevin Owens feud seems to be a placeholder feud, maybe for most guys, to be quite honest with you. Yeah. The feud with Tyler Breeze was designed just to get Tyler Breeze over, and now he's not even on Raw. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. That seems like a waste of Ziggler. It blows my mind to think that last year he was the sole survivor in Survivor Series in the Team Authority versus Team Cena match. There were some people at the time said, wow, holy shit. Is this the beginning of a major push for Ziggler? Could he even go on and face Brock Lesnar? I mean, none of that ever happened, and he's kind of been stuck in neutral ever since. So yeah, I think if WWE, and I have questions about if they're willing to fully, let him go down this road, because that does seem to go against sort of the company's mantra right now, everybody being so controlled and so scripted, and pipe bomb promos, if you will, are kind of a thing of the past to a large degree. So I don't know if they have the balls really to go through with this, but if they do, I think it could revitalize Ziggler, and God knows he's one of the best workers they have in the roster. So if you get him involved in storylines that I care about and then give him 25 minutes to go out there and work a quality match in the ring, that's going to increase the value of WWE programming a lot, in my view.
Yeah, you're 100% right. They 100% should put his real-world frustration into his storylines. Look, a lot of the best storylines, like you mentioned, in the past had some sort of real-life aspect to it. I think about Matt Hardy and Edge, when, basically Edge stole Lita from Matt Hardy.
Right.
And they were going out in real life, and then Edge and Lita were going out. Like, I watched the show on the WWE Network called Rivalries, where they did an hour.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and it was really intense, very good. I mean, I wasn't watching wrestling at that time, I'll be honest, but if I was, I'm sure I would have loved that angle. You had Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, two guys that just fucking hated each other backstage. They brought that out into the ring, had some incredible matches. And, probably the most famous one is Stone Cold. Stone Cold Steve Austin, who in ECW really started this Stone Cold character because he was furious at WCW and sort of the establishment for firing him because he was injured and not appreciating him for the stuff that he's done. And then, we all know where that went. And he was the most popular guy in WWE.
Punk as well was kind of in a similar situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have concrete examples of how this worked. And like I said, these were some of the best storylines and angles and characters of all time.
And Ziggler believes it right now. Like, even watching the promo he did backstage right now, like, you can tell a difference between that and sort of the scripted bullshit that a lot of guys give. I mean, he meant every word that he said.
Exactly. And, that was what I was going to say is, he's capable of doing this. There are some guys that might not be able to pull it off, but he is so talented that he absolutely can. He's such a great speaker. He's very good in the ring. I believe him when he says this. Maybe this is a work. Of course, it's possible that it is, but that just shows how good he is. Mm-hmm. That that we 100% believe that this is really how he feels, and this is how he should feel, of course, because he has been shit on for the last year. But really quickly to touch on the feud with Kevin Owens. I think it'll be a good feud, but I think it sucks for Dolph Ziggler because we all know that he won't be going over Kevin Owens.
Right.
So what is the point if you're trying to highlight Dolph Ziggler, if he's not going to win? I think that, if you're trying to maybe push him with this angle where he's frustrated, you need to have him win, eventually a feud, to make him look strong.
Right.
And if he loses to Kevin Owens,
win and still not get ahead. That kind of fuels his narrative.
Right, exactly. But you want a payoff at some point where he does get ahead for all this. No one's going to care if he never gets ahead and he does this storyline. You need a payoff, like i.e., Daniel Bryan. So I don't know. I mean, that's my thoughts. I mean, do you have anything else on this?
No, on Ziggler, not necessarily. I mean, I'm optimistic. I'm a little bit more, I guess, bullish on Ziggler's career, I think, moving forward now than I was a couple weeks ago. So that's certainly a good thing. John, we're going to stick with WWE. We're going to kind of do something a little bit different this week. Our longtime faithful listeners know we have a very popular segment called Swipe Right, Swipe Left, where ordinarily we have just 5 quick hit statements from any area of life that we feel like talk about, and we swipe right if we agree with the statement, or swipe left if we disagree with the statement. We're going to do things differently this week. We mentioned the Slammy Awards were last night on the Raw. They kind of dominated the show and kind of, I think, as you mentioned, John, sort of took the flow away from the show at a lot of times. But nevertheless, they gave out more than a dozen Slammy Awards. We're going to do our own year-end awards show next week, so we won't spoil that too much. But we did want to touch on the Slammy, so we're going to do a special edition of Swipe Right, Swipe Left, where we go through basically the biggest slam. We're not going to go on every single one, but basically the biggest ones that we think people are talking about today and are important going forward. So, John, let's just jump right into this with one of the big ones here right off the bat. Superstar of the Year for 2015 is Seth Rollins. I'm swiping right here. To me, there was a three-way race between Seth Rollins, John Cena, and I put Brock Lesnar in there because of impact on the product. But look, Seth Rollins captures his first WWE Championship. He's the main heel on the roster for basically the entire year, up until the week or two before Survivor Series when he got hurt. He was asked to carry the load on the mic week after week, go out there and talk for 15 minutes by himself. He did it. He was asked to main event pay-per-views. He was asked to wrestle twice on some pay-per-views, and he did it and consistently put on 4 to 5 star matches all the time. He's the breakout star. To me, Cena and Lesnar are both distant second and third. I'm swiping right on Rollins.
I'm swiping hard right here. Absolutely. You mentioned he carried the show. And not just for all 2015, but he did for the latter end of 2014 as well. When Brock Lesnar was the champion and he wasn't wrestling at every pay-per-view, Seth Rollins was always the guy who was in the main event. Whether he was fighting Dean Ambrose or he was fighting John Cena, he was always the guy you could rely on. He was absolutely the workhorse of 2015. I had mentioned before that he hadn't missed a Raw since 2012, Seth Rollins. Of course, until he got injured. So that means, of course, that he didn't miss one episode of Raw in 2015 until, of course, he got hurt. But look, this was, to me, see, I know you had two guys in the running, but this wasn't even close to me. It was 100% Seth Rollins, and I am thrilled that the WWE Universe got this one right, because I was really scared that they wouldn't. And, if they voted for Roman Reigns or John Cena or something, I was going to be really pissed off. Seth Rollins deserves this, and I'm excited to see him come back. It was interesting to hear what he had to say last night. I felt like, really quick, just want to touch on this. I felt like he wasn't a face, but he wasn't a heel either. Yeah. And I'm wondering maybe if WWE told him, stay in the middle here because we're not sure how we're going to book you when you get back.
Well, it was amazing. Yeah, I noticed that too. I mean, he got a babyface pop when he came out, but he sort of reverted into his, kind of heel character to a certain degree. So I thought that was interesting.
Right.
And, he was getting some boos after he had, when he did that. So I think that just kind of underscores the skill that he has on the mic.
Right.
Got that babyface pop. He was still able to keep the crowd sort of, in the middle and not go into full babyface mode. So he's an underrated mic worker, I think, at this point, too, in his career.
That's true. That's true. Absolutely. Ben, our second swipe right, swipe left here is Diva of the Year. Now, this went to Nikki Bella. Ben, I'll keep this really short. I'm going to swipe right here. I don't think she's the best diva on the roster. I don't think she has the best mic work. I don't think she's the best in-ring worker. But she's pretty good at both of those things. And look, I mean, overall, she broke the record for longest reigning champion. I mean, that doesn't happen every year. It doesn't happen every week. So she certainly deserves credit for that. And let's remember that the divas that we really like, the Charlottes, the Becky Lynches, the Sasha Bankses, they didn't come on TV until midway through the year. Went to WWE programming or later on in the year. So I think, you had to kind of eliminate them. I don't think they would have been eligible. In my opinion, they shouldn't have been eligible for this. So to me, the only choice was Nikki Bella. I'm swiping right.
I'm swiping right, too. I mean, look, she had the belt, the Divas title for so long. She had some damn good matches. We've talked many times before about how she's one of the more improved workers in WWE, period. Not even in the Divas division. So I think, almost by, and not to disrespect Nikki Bella, but almost by process of elimination, as you said. If you're the champion for that long, she was at the center of every storyline all year long until she got hurt. And her in-ring work improved to such a degree that I think she was a clear winner. So kudos to the WWE Universe, I guess. They got those two right, in my opinion, Rollins and Nikki Bella. Here's one, John, where I'm not sure if they got this right. Maybe they did. Rivalry of the Year going to The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar. Do you agree with that or not?
I'm going to swipe right because just by default. I looked at the other nominees that they had on there, and I thought Undertaker versus Lesnar probably was the most impactful rivalry out of all of those. But I think it's funny because it just shows how bad the product has been in 2015 that this is the winner.
Two part-time guys.
Excuse me?
Two part-time guys.
Exactly. And, I looked at the winner of this when I was recapping this morning before the show, and I didn't know who the other nominees were. And so I looked at those, and before I looked at the other nominees, I couldn't even think of another rivalry that was good that happened throughout the whole year. Like, I was actually trying to think about it, and I couldn't think of one that I thought would have been nominated for this. So that just shows how poor the booking has been, how poor the storylines have been, that we couldn't even think of, I couldn't at least, of one or two very good rivalries that maybe were going on for a long time or were extremely impactful. So for that reason, just by default, I'll swipe right on this because they did have a couple of very good matches and it was extremely impactful, top of the card stuff.
I'm going to reluctantly swipe right for the same reason. I mean, I don't know, maybe Reigns and Wyatt, but that didn't have quite the same main event feel that this did. I mean, this was just a huge, big money. I'm kind of troubled by it, too, but I think you're right. I'm hard-pressed to think of one. I mean, Cena and Owens didn't last long enough. There really just weren't any other feuds that lasted long enough, really, and sort of had the impact that this one did. So I think I'm going to have to swipe right on Undertaker and Brock Lesnar being the rivalry of the year. But I think you're right. It's kind of a bittersweet thing because it just underscores how few true blood rivalries there really were this year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. Ben, I think you and I are going to probably have a problem with this next one, just knowing you a little bit. The swipe right, swipe left. Tag team of the year. Now, this went to the Usos, which to me was certainly a surprise. I think I know where you're going with this. What is your take on the Usos winning tag team of the year?
I'm swiping left hard for two reasons here. One, they were injured, or Jimmy was, for much of the year. And so they weren't really even a staple in the tag team division for at least about 6 months or so.
Yeah, oh yeah.
For the most part. So that, to me, kind of disqualifies them from the get-go. But even if they had been, come on. The New Day is so clearly the tag team of the year, the faction of the year, in my opinion. It's not even close. They're the most over with the fans. They're the most entertaining. And they had probably the best matches of the year, too, only because the Usos, I mean, as we said, have not been around. Cesaro and Tyson Kidd haven't been around for much of the year. So they've been stuck carrying the tag team division, having the best matches, and doing mic work for 20 minutes plus on basically every episode of Monday Night Raw for the past 6 months. So the New Day, clearly, to me, is the tag team of the year. I'm swiping left hard on the Usos getting the award.
I'm swiping left hard as well. I mean, you said everything that I would need to say. This is really a travesty, man. It is. I could not believe this when I saw this. The New Day 100% was the tag team of the year. Even if this went to another tag team besides the Usos, I would still, of course, have a major problem with it, but I wouldn't have as big of a problem with it. But you are right. They were not a tag team for at least half of the year. Right. So how can you say that they were the tag team of the year? It doesn't make any sense. I'm very disappointed in the WWE Universe in this because of this. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe it's because there were all kids that voted, right? And the kids love the Usos and people, the kids hate the New Day. But then again, if that was the case, then Seth Rollins wouldn't have won Superstar of the Year. Right. So, I mean, this is really concerning. I think the people that voted for the Usos need to listen to the Guilty Pleasures podcast a little bit more to get, some real takes and to become more knowledgeable about the business, because this was horrific. I'm swiping left as hard as I can.
And if you're listening and you voted for the Usos as Tag Team of the Year, please hit us up at the GP Podcast on Twitter. We'd love to hear your rationale for exactly why you voted that way. Speaking of things I have a problem with, John, Breakout Star of the Year went to Neville of the award here, which, look, let's face the fact that Neville is a great wrestler. I mean, he's entertaining to watch, but he really hasn't been involved in any major storylines that I can think of. He's probably had about 2 minutes of combined mic time that I can remember since he came onto the main roster. So I'm swiping left here to Neville being the breakout star. The breakout star is Kevin Owens, in my view, and there's no doubt about that. No disrespect to Neville. He's fun to watch in the ring, but Kevin Owens had a major impact on the roster from the word go when he came up and defeated John Cena in his first match. So to me, it's not close. I got to swipe left on Neville.
I am swiping left as well. I share, your opinion on everything there. I'm 100%. We both think that he's great. He has a lot of potential, but he hasn't been booked well. And, really that's a big part of it. Kevin Owens came in and beat John Cena in his first match clean, by the way. And I saw a video recently on the internet, I don't know if you've seen this, where they document all of John Cena's clean losses throughout his career, and there's maybe like 12 to 15 in his long career. And let's face it, Kevin Owens was one of them in his first match. So, even if Kevin Owens had a so-so run the rest of the way throughout the year, he still should have been Breakout Star of the Year. But, he didn't. He had a great run. He was Intercontinental Champion, and he had some big-time feuds. So this was a bad move again. Once again, Ben, it seemed like kids were voting on this one for Neville just because of the one move he has. And Kevin Owens doesn't look like a superstar. He doesn't do any massive high-flying moves, but he is so much better than him in every way, in my opinion. This was a huge injustice. I'm swiping left.
And just real briefly, John, before you move on to the next one, I also didn't like how Kevin Owens basically just came out and bullied Neville off of the pulpit when he got the Swammy Award, and Neville just said, okay, whatever, and left. I mean, I'm not really a big fan of that. If you're trying to be a baby face, I know you're a lot smaller than Kevin Owens, but come on, show some balls and stand up for yourself a little bit. He just kind of came off as weak in that regard. I don't think that helps him going forward.
Right, and it makes it look like that Kevin Owens should have been the winner of that award. Right. You don't want someone that looks weak to be your breakout star. I mean, that did look bad. I 100% agree with you.
Shown up by the guy who should have won, exactly.
Right. Ben, the next one here was Match of the Year, which I was certainly looking forward to this one. Wanted to see the result of this. The winner here was The Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar at Hell in a Cell, which was a great match. You and I both loved that match. Are you swiping right or left here?
I'm swiping left here. This was a damn good match, and I won't reveal what my match of the year is, but I will. I mean, there are a number that I think were better than this. I think the Royal Rumble Triple Threat was better than this. I think you could argue that Reigns and Lesnar was probably close to, maybe equal to this. I think Cena versus Owens, the first match, which was one of the nominees, was better than this. I think Cena versus Cesaro on Monday Night Raw was better than this. Rollins versus Dean Ambrose from Money in the Bank in the ladder match might have been better than this. We've seen a number of matches, I think, that have been better than this. And no disrespect to this match. It was a damn good match. We both gave it an A in our review, but not match of the year. It just wasn't long enough for me, and a couple of other issues that I have with it when you're trying to talk about match of the year. So I'm swiping left on this being the best match of 2015.
I'm swiping left as well. I thought that Royal Rumble Triple Threat match was the match of the year. I don't think it got enough love because it happened so long ago. It was almost 12 months ago that match happened.
It did get nominated, though. So
it did. But I think in terms of the people voting, they kind of forgot about it. But that was sort of Rollins' breakout match, if you remember. He debuted the Phoenix Splash. He did the elbow from the top rope to Lesnar through the announce table. That was an incredible match. We didn't know who was going to win. They kept it going. We also didn't know if Brock Lesnar was really injured or not. So they played that up well, extremely well. Cena and Rollins carried the match for a lot of it, but they were very good in the ring. It just felt like each superstar brought their very best to that match, and they said, we want to have match of the year, and I think they did that for a lot of reasons. Because to me, it's not just about what happened in the ring. It's about the ramifications of it. It's about, how did we get emotionally invested in the match? Did we know what was going to happen? The outcome, all of that goes into it. And I think that Royal Rumble match, which by the way, we watched together,
we did.
Was the best I saw this year, or at least one of the best. I just think it was better than The Undertaker Lesnar, although it was a darn good match. And what made it a lot better was that both of them bled. And I think you and I can agree on that. Not that we want to see blood all the time, but once in a while, that just shows how much of an impact it can have. Because I guarantee you this, Ben, if those guys didn't bleed in that match, it would not have been match of the year.
That's probably true.
So, that's just my opinion there. Ben, the next one here is Double Cross of the Year. So when someone stabs someone else in the back here, The winner was Damien Mizdow eliminating The Miz at WrestleMania in the Battle Royal. Ben, I'm going to let you take this one for the most part, so I'll just go really quickly and give you my answer. I want to hear your opinion on this. Look, I'm going to swipe right here because I didn't really think there was anything else that was an incredible double cross in 2015. The angle was white hot at the time, and everyone was just waiting for it and waiting for it and waiting for it. So this was the payoff to all of that, all of the stuff that they had done for months and months. So I think that made it great. Even though we agree that after this it went completely downhill because the WWE didn't book it right, but for this it worked. Maybe it was a little predictable, but everyone was anticipating it, and then this is when it happened. So for that reason, I'll swipe right. Although I didn't think this was amazing by any stretch, and I just didn't think there were many other double crosses that jumped out to me either.
There are very few that even pop into my mind, to be honest with you, from this year. So I'll swipe right as well. Look, I've discussed at length in this podcast, I think this was one of the most mishandled angles that I can remember in recent memory, years in WWE. This thing was a complete joke, and somehow Mizdow got it over through the sheer force of willpower to the point where it was one of the hottest things going in the company. I mean, fans wanted to see this moment happen, and then we finally got it, and they basically fucked it up from the word go by having him eliminate The Miz, but then lose the Battle Royal to the Big Show, when they should have been the last two in the ring, and Mizdow should have won the Battle Royal, and then going on to have a 2-3 month feud with Mizdow and win it, and then you've got a solid mid-card babyface who's actually over with the fans.
Right, and let's face it, the Big Show did not need to win that match. That was the most boring thing they could have done. It's not like they were setting up a push for the Big Show.
No, exactly. Right. They basically just sabotaged, Damien Sandow from that point forward, and now we haven't even seen him on TV in months and months. So horribly mishandled, but just by process of elimination, John, I will swipe right to that being the double cross of the year. A few more here, John. We've got the This Is Awesome moment of 2015. The Rock and Ronda Rousey confronting the Authority at WrestleMania. That gets the win. What do you think about this, John? Are you swiping left or right?
I'm swiping left. I didn't really love this segment. I thought, a lot of people were really into it. I wasn't really into it. It just, obviously it was staged. I know wrestling is staged, but it felt really staged. It felt cheap. It just felt like they wanted to get The Rock on there just to have him on there, and same with Ronda Rousey. It didn't feel organic or anything like that. So it kind of turned me off a little bit. I think Lesnar destroying the Cadillac was one of my, This Is Awesome moments, or the Divas Revolution. But I think the Lesnar destroying the Cadillac thing, just because that was visually incredible. I've never seen a human being tear a car door off with his bare hands and then toss it about 30 feet and almost going into the crowd.
Yeah.
It was just a very cool moment. It was very different. We don't see stuff like that anymore in the WWE, where personal belongings get trashed, kind of like when Stone Cold did the cement into Mr. McMahon's convertible Corvette. So for me, I think that was the most This Is Awesome moment. I also think the Divas Revolution is up there. But, of course, I think it's a sour taste in my mouth because of how poorly it was handled. But you remember having all of the girls come up onto the main roster. I mean, that was certainly a surprise, and we were extremely excited for that when it happened. We just got very much let down by the WWE.
Yeah, I'm going to swipe left, too. I love the Brock Lesnar Cadillac was fantastic. I think the Brock Lesnar his appearance on Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania, I think, could have been up there as a This Is Awesome moment as well, when he was F5ing Michael Cole and all of the referees and destroying everything in sight. That was pretty awesome. So there were a couple that were better than this. The Rock and Rousey, it was okay. It was interesting at the time. I wonder if it's going to actually result in anything at WrestleMania 32, as was the rumor. I don't know if The Rock or Rousey are going to be there. But overall, I mean, it was a so-so moment. I'm not surprised that it won, because The Rock and Ronda Rousey, of course, are mainstream stars. So, if you have a lot of casual fans maybe voting in this poll, I think they would probably be drawn more to that moment than any other that was on the list. So, but for me, it wasn't the best moment of the year, certainly not the most awesome moment of the year. So I am going to swipe left on this question, John.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, man. The next one here is the OMG shocking moment, which I just fucking hate the fact that they have OMG in this.
And made Paul Heyman read it as the presenter. Like, that was coming, come on.
Yeah. Have someone that's like...
He was almost disgusted having to say OMG on the air, you could tell.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, I fucking hate that term anyway. And it's dated. It's just, anyway. Look, the winner of this was Kalisto's Salida del Sol, Ben, off the top of the ladder to one of the Usos through another ladder at TLC, which was absolutely fucking incredible, Ben. I mean, my God, when we saw that. Look, I am going to swipe left here. I think I might surprise you a little bit. Look, that move was incredible to me. It was the one thing this year I thought that I literally jumped out of my seat and was yelling about. I couldn't believe that it happened. You and I were watching that together, and we were just stunned. I was yelling. It was one of the most hardcore, best moves I've ever seen. So that was really cool. But I'm going to give it to Rollins cashing in his Money in the Bank at WrestleMania, just because it had much more of a bigger impact than Kalisto did. None of us really saw that coming. This was when no one knew what was going to happen between Lesnar and Reigns. People were completely against Reigns winning the title, and they thought that might happen. So we were all really scared of that. And then Seth Rollins comes out, cashes his Money in the Bank, and wins the World Heavyweight Championship. To me, that was the most shocking moment of the year. If not, because of how, really because of how impactful it was and how much it determined the rest of 2015 for the WWE.
Mm-hmm. You make a fair point. I'm going to swipe right. It was probably the most shocking thing, certainly the most shocking thing in terms of actual in-ring work that I saw all year. So I will give it to that. Rollins cashing in, I think the Undertaker return are probably two, kind of on the heels of that, even though we sort of knew Taker was coming back.
Right.
He started. But, I mean, look, you're right. I mean, just kind of judging by the eye test and sort of the physical test of what was my reaction, what did I do when I saw that, I jumped out of my seat right there alongside you, and my mouth was hanging wide open after seeing this Salida del Sol off the ladder. So just for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and swipe right. I think it probably was the most shocking, certainly from the in-ring perspective, that I saw all year. John, next up here, two more to run through. The surprise return of the year goes to Sting on Monday Night Raw when Seth Rollins thought he was getting a statue unveiled of himself. Ended up being Sting underneath the black tarp. I'm going to swipe right here. I didn't see this one coming, and I remember this was up until last week in Philadelphia. That episode of Raw may have been the best one of the year.
Right.
The post SummerSlam edition of Raw was a fantastic episode, and nobody knew Sting was coming back. So that was great. Now, I mean, long-term WWE planning here, they didn't really do a whole lot with it. Sting ended up having one match against Seth Rollins and got hurt. Not sure if he'll even wrestle again. So as a long-term angle, it didn't really amount to a whole hell of a lot. But for a few weeks there, it worked in terms of getting some buzz around Seth Rollins and giving him a new opponent. And it was certainly surprising at the time. So I'm swiping right.
Yeah, I'm going to swipe right as well. I think the only thing that could have, maybe knocked this off here was Alberto Del Rio returning at Hell in a Cell. Because I was completely surprised. No one had any idea that he might be coming back. They did an incredible job of hiding that from us. But the reason I'm not picking that is because he's just been flat since he's been back, and the WWE has done such a bad job with him since his return that it kind of just soured it for me. If he had been in the main event right now and making a huge impact, I definitely would have given it to him for surprise return of the year. But it just didn't really have much impact because Del Rio being on the in the WWE hasn't had much. He's the U.S. champion right now, but he's never even really defended it. The title has lost its luster to me. The Sting moment, like you said, was really cool. We didn't see that coming. So yeah, I'm going to swipe right. I think Sting did deserve that one.
Good. And the last one up here, John, is the best, which I didn't even know this was a category, the best U.S. Open Challenge match.
Yeah.
So I guess it's going through all of John Cena's matches on Monday Night Raw for the period where he had the U.S. title belt coming out of WrestleMania. I know we both loved John Cena's U.S. Open Challenge. I think it was one of the best parts of Monday Night Raw for much of this year. He certainly delivered in the ring, I think, to a degree that even his harshest critics had to admit that he's a pretty damn good wrestler, even at this point in his life. The winner was John Cena versus Cesaro from the July 6th edition of Monday Night Raw. And John, I'm swiping right here. This is probably going to end up being in my top 5 match of the year, which I will reveal next week on the show. But I think this is one of the best matches of the year, one of the best matches I've seen on Raw in many years. These two guys just tore the house down for a half an hour. John Cena got the win, retained the belt. But this did wonders for Cesaro, who, of course, got derailed yet again by an injury a few weeks back. But this kind of really put him back on the map in terms of in-ring work after he'd been forgotten for a little while. So swiping right here, this being the best of the U.S. Open Challenge in 2015.
Yeah, I'm going to swipe right as well. Look, they were all great. All of these options to pick from were great matches. I could have seen any one of them winning, and I think I would have been okay with it. This match was incredible. Cesaro was unbelievable in this match. This was actually probably the match that really propelled Cesaro, into his sort of, mainstream popularity. Where then
Cesaro section came after this match.
Exactly. So you got to give Cena credit for that. You got to give Cesaro credit for that. And had Cesaro not gotten hurt, who knows where he would be right now on the card. Looking back, this would have been the match to propel him to that point. So I'm definitely swiping right here.
I think so. Yeah, it's a shame that he, just for whatever reason, can never quite seem to get to that next level. Because I know you and I both think that he deserves to be there, especially right now when they have so many other guys out injured. John, so that was swipe right, swipe left. I'm going to move us right in here to another one of our most popular segments on the show. Every week, this is Scumbag of the Week.
Scumbag.
This is where we call out the worst people that we can find from all over the planet and single one of them out for you guys. Every week, we've had some doozies, and as I said, next week we will be announcing the Scumbag of the Year, which is going to be very tough. John and I will have many heated debates between now and then leading up to that prestigious award. But, John, we have a repeat offender this week, and this guy I think is going to end up being in the running for Scumbag of the Year.
Absolutely.
John, Martin Shkreli, I'm sure you remember that name, the drug kingpin, if you want to put it that way, who came under fire after raising the price of an HIV drug by 7,000% overnight after his company had acquired the drug. This guy's 32 years old, basically our age, just looks like a huge douchebag, was cocky. He just recently on Twitter talked about being the country's most eligible bachelor. He apparently just paid $2 million for a special edition Wu-Tang Clan album.
Right.
What the fuck? So this guy was Scumbag of the Year for what he did by jacking up the price of a drug that people need to live while doing ridiculous bullshit like that. But, John, there is a God, apparently, and we can confirm that here in the GP podcast because Martin Shkreli was arrested, and the reason that he was arrested makes him even more of a scumbag. He's been arrested and arraigned and is now awaiting trial on charges of securities fraud and wire fraud. So he is being charged by the federal government. Will have to face off with the federal government in court coming up soon. So here's a guy who not only is a complete jerk, brags about his money, brags about being a womanizer, jacks up the cost of drugs on people who cannot afford it. But now it turns out that all the money that he was making in the first place and how successful his company apparently was a complete fraud and complete bullshit and built on lies in sort of the Bernie Madoff mode that we saw a few years ago. So this guy is a complete joke. Not only is he an asshole and not only is he a scumbag, but now he apparently is a liar and a thief and a con man. So I think he, anybody who's invested in his company should certainly be pissed off. But I will take solace, John, in the fact that this guy was arrested, dragged out of his home, and put behind bars. And hopefully, after his upcoming trial, that's where he remains for a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, you said everything I would have, man. Look, I think this guy is definitely the front runner right now for Scumbag of the Year. We have a few others that we'll share next week, but he's making a very strong case for us to call his ass out on such a grand stage.
He just keeps getting better.
He does. I think he just loves it, man. He just can't help himself. Like, he just cannot help himself. Loves being in the news. I thought it was funny, Ben, that I had so many people text me and call me and tweet me and ask me, did you hear that Shkreli got arrested? And I thought that was very interesting because clearly our original Scumbag of the Week segment on him had a huge impact on all of our listeners because everyone, reached out to me asking if I heard about this. So I thought that was pretty incredible. Of course I heard about this, and of course I was fucking thrilled, and of course I texted you immediately. And we definitely knew that we had to call his ass out once again. But I mean, this is pathetic. And if anyone, like you said, maybe was on the fence about him a little bit, didn't know if they should get, maybe, oh, I can see his perspective, blah, blah, blah. I think this just shut the door on all of that. He is a horrible human being. He has no business being a citizen in this fucking country, and he deserves everything bad that he gets. So I'm absolutely thrilled that he got arrested. We'll see what happens with him, and of course we will keep updating this. But Ben, once again, and I say this all the time, but if anyone knows Martin Shkreli, or any of his friends or family are listening to the podcast, please come on the show, tweet us. If we're missing a perspective here, please provide it with us. But unfortunately, you will leave the show crying with your head between your legs because there is no support of this guy, and we do not back down from anything, Ben, obviously. So, yeah, great choice for Scumbag of the Week once again. And this guy fucking deserves everything he gets.
Just briefly to tack on here, not only is he a scumbag, but I'm starting to wonder how smart the guy is, because from a New York Times article last week after he was arrested, says federal officials described his crimes as a quasi-Ponzi scheme in which he used money from his company to pay off money-losing investors in his hedge funds. An FBI official called his business schemes a securities fraud trifecta of lies, deceit, and greed. That's exactly the kind of thing that the federal government is looking at these days following the financial meltdown of 2008, 2009. There are all kinds of new laws in place to prevent that sort of thing from happening. So, I mean, all eyes are on whether you're a pharmaceutical company or a bank or, an investment company, a venture capital firm, whatever the case may be. You can't do things like that, and anybody who's worth their salt in the business community knows that, especially post-2008. So not only is he a scumbag, and not only is he just kind of over the top and cocky, but apparently he lacks some common sense or has delusions of grandeur because he didn't realize that he would get caught for such obvious crimes.
Right, and look, he blatantly lied to the American public.
He did.
Because he said that he was going to use the money from the profits for this drug to do more research and to find alternatives for other medicine to help people out. And to not use that money for that and to use it for something like you said, I mean, that's just a perfect thing to show what kind of guy he truly is, and the fact that he doesn't give a shit about what he does, because he had an opportunity to come clean to the public, try to repair his image a little bit, become maybe a little bit more of a sympathetic figure in a way. I know it'd be very tough. And he completely shit all over that. So for all this to come out, it's just fucking fantastic, man. Absolutely. So everyone, that was Scumbag of the Week. To our new listeners and viewers, we hope you certainly enjoyed it. We have a blast calling people out. It's probably one of our fucking passions, to be honest.
And help us get the Scumbag of the Year on this show, whether it ends up being Martin Shkreli or one of our other contenders. We will launch a Twitter campaign. We need to have the scumbag on the air to defend his or herself once that time comes.
Yeah, so please, to our listeners and viewers, when we announce the Scumbag of the Year, please tweet them and tell them about our show. Tell them that their ass just got called out and that they should come on and defend themselves because they have a different opinion of them now that the Guilty Pleasures podcast gave their opinions on this guy. So please be sure to do that. Ben, moving on here, we're going to go into our NFL segment. And Week 15 of the NFL season just happened. We are now sort of getting towards the end of the NFL regular season. It's crazy. It felt like just a couple weeks ago we were talking about Week 2 or 3.
Right.
So the season has certainly flown by, just like all the episodes of this show. But there are a few main things that I'd like to tackle, and they sort of continue off of what we've talked about the last few weeks, I think, because all of the main storylines have just progressed and have sort of stayed the same. There really haven't been too many others that have come into the limelight and sort of the mainstream here. But look, the Panthers are now 14-0. They are still undefeated. Cam Newton is just absolutely crushing it. The last 2 weeks, he's been unstoppable. He caused me to lose one of my fantasy leagues this week, which I'm absolutely furious about, but that's a whole nother story. So he is just dominating right now, even though I did take him in DraftKings, came in 600th out of 230,000 people in the Millionaire Maker. So give myself a little plug there. But Panthers look borderline unstoppable, Ben.
Yeah.
To you, are they even really the best team in the NFC right now? Because the Cardinals and the Seahawks, though, are also surging. And do you think the Panthers will go undefeated in the regular season?
I think they will at this point. I mean, their last 2 games are against the Falcons and the Buccaneers. So, I mean, I think that if they're trying to go for 16-0, I think they'll get it at this point. You know, and look, their win over the Giants was impressive in the sense that I picked the Giants in that game, which, by the way, the Panthers only won by 3. The spread was 4, so good pick there by me.
Damn right.
I expected the Giants to win that game. That seemed like the last losable game for the Panthers, and the Giants came to play, man. They put up 35 points in that game. They took the Panthers to the limit, and the Panthers were able to grit out a win. So, I mean, that was kind of impressive because it was the exact opposite of what we had seen from them the previous week when they blew out a completely inept high school team known as the Atlanta Falcons, 38-0. So, but to come from that, a blowout win when you're taking selfies on the sideline before the game is even over, to then just an incredibly hard-fought win that goes down to the wire against a Giants team that plays well in big games, let's face it, that was really impressive. I think they do go 16-0. I'm still on the fence about whether or not I consider them the best team in the NFC, and that's an amazing thing to say about a team that might go 16-0. But I still wonder, if you have a Seahawks team going in there in a divisional round, or even the Cardinals going in there maybe in an NFC Championship game scenario or something to that effect, I would be hard-pressed, man. I think I might lean toward taking the Seahawks and probably even the Cardinals, against the Panthers in the playoffs. So, it's difficult to say because you have a 16-0 team. You think they're automatically the best in the conference, but I guess I just need to see them actually do it in the playoffs because they haven't done it in the Cam Newton, Ron Rivera era there in Carolina. So, look, I mean, there's nothing more they can do at this point to prove that to me in the regular season. They're just going to have to do it in the playoffs, and then if they come back, win the Super Bowl, come back next year, they're a dominating team, I think they'll get more of the benefit of the doubt. But right now, I'm not convinced they're the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think if Cam Newton plays these final 2 games, they're going to go undefeated. I think there's no question in my mind about that. But all they have to do is win this week, and then they would clinch home field advantage for the entire playoffs. So, you have to wonder if they do win this week, which we both think they will.
Yeah.
Will they sit Newton for the final game? And like I said, I think if they do sit him, they will lose that final game. But that'll be interesting to see what happens there. I don't know if I would, to be honest, but we'll see what Ron Rivera does. Look, in terms of them being, by far the best team, I don't think they are. I agree with you because, look, we both really liked the Cardinals throughout this year. We think they've looked extremely impressive, and they have. I think, I don't know, man. I just think that they have something about them where it still feels like they're playing this underdog role a little bit. I don't know how to explain it, but, it doesn't seem like people are still talking about them as like one of the best teams in the league, or at least the top team. Besides Cam Newton, Carson Palmer is my MVP. If Cam Newton wasn't in the league, it would be Carson Palmer. So they're getting quarterback production that is close to as good as what Cam Newton is giving the Panthers. They just found a star at the running back position in David Johnson, who the last 2 weeks has absolutely destroyed on the ground. This past week, he had 187 yards and 3 touchdowns against the lifeless Eagles. But nonetheless, I mean, he had an absolutely monstrous game. We know how dominant their receivers are. We know how good their defense is. So I think really with the Cardinals, the one thing you were saying to yourself was, okay, they had Chris Johnson at running back. He's pretty good, but, he wasn't great. Now that he's hurt and they have David Johnson, who looks like an absolute star, that just gives them another dimension that makes them look extremely dangerous. Yeah, man, I think that if the Panthers face the Cardinals, I would probably pick the Cardinals. I think I really would. The Seahawks just keep surging. I picked them this week to win by more than 14 and a half, and they
proved right.
And they covered. So, I mean, we know how dominant they are right now. Look, I think it's extremely clear, though, that these are the best three teams in the NFC for sure.
Oh, yeah, they're miles ahead, in my opinion, certainly of the Packers and the Vikings and other teams that are kind of competing there for playoff spots. John, in the AFC, the Denver Broncos went down this week to the Pittsburgh Steelers in a pretty damn good game, which underscores, I think, how dangerous the Steelers are going into the playoffs. We've talked about them the past couple of weeks. But how do the Broncos, I mean, assuming Peyton Manning is healthy, and there's conspiracy theories out there that maybe he is a little bit healthier than the Broncos are letting on, and they don't want to put him in an embarrassing position of having to be a backup to a guy that, until a few weeks ago, most people had never heard of before in Brock Osweiler. But I just wonder, going into the playoffs, they might have to end up playing on Wild Card Weekend, hosting a game at this rate. So if Peyton Manning is healthy, is he your starter? If you're Gary Kubiak and the Denver Broncos, I mean, does he get the nod, or are you still not convinced? I mean, let's face it, injuries aside, Peyton Manning does not have a great record in the playoffs to begin with, so it's not like you're bringing in a guy who is always money and just clutch in these big game situations. But, I mean, how do you evaluate the Broncos quarterback situation going forward, and do they have a chance to make noise in the playoffs regardless of who's under center?
Yeah, I think that was a great point about Peyton Manning. I think it has to be looked at this way. If Peyton Manning's poor play the entire year was because of an injury, that he was maybe injured for most of the year, and then he's completely healthy, I think that's one thing. I think if that's the case, then maybe you have to consider starting him for sure. But if that wasn't the case, if he was that bad and he was healthy for the most part, I think that you have to continue starting Osweiler. I think you absolutely do. Look, in the end, these are grown men who are trying to make a living in this league to support their families. And you have to, as a coach, in order to not lose the locker room, give those men the best chance to win. And right now, to anyone that has two eyes and knows football, they can see that Brock Osweiler gives them the best chance to win. The offense looks so much better with him, basically, running the helm. For sure, the running game opens up. The receivers are looking like a little more like themselves. So, yeah, I think you keep Osweiler in unless, like I said, Peyton Manning was hurt the entire year, and now you're sure that he's 100% healthy and could sort of sell the locker room on that and sell, the organization, everyone on that point. But I think the players have to be behind Osweiler right now. With him, I don't think they can go to the Super Bowl. I just think there are other teams in the AFC that are better. But, especially if there's a healthy Andy Dalton coming back, I think maybe the Bengals, the Patriots, and potentially the Steelers might be, in another situation would be a little bit better than the Broncos. But, who knows? Of course they can make it to the Super Bowl. Anything's possible. They're definitely good enough. I just wouldn't say that they're the favorites, or I wouldn't put them there.
Yeah, the thing that I wonder about, you mentioned the Peyton Manning injury and has he been 100% healthy. Let's not forget, that was the rationale we were given as to why he was playing so poorly last year.
Yep.
Went into, the last quarter of the season and going into the playoffs, it was, Manning is hurt, and that's why he hasn't looked so good. So if you come back and say the same thing again this year after he had a full off season to rest and recover, that's when you start to get into the territory of, okay, is he just too old and his body is consistently breaking down and he's never going to be 100%. Certainly not back 100% of the Peyton Manning that we used to see. You're right. This is a locker room call to me. You do not, regardless of who the guy is, it doesn't matter if it's Peyton Manning, Joe Montana, John Elway. You can't stick someone in and replace someone who has been doing a damn good job as Osweiler has. The offense looks better. I would find it difficult to believe that the players aren't more behind Osweiler than they are behind Manning. And again, just to reiterate, it's not like you're bringing in a Tom Brady or a Joe Montana or someone who is clutch in the playoffs all the time. Right. You're bringing in a guy who, even at 100% healthy in his prime of 28, 29, 30 years old, consistently lost first-round playoff games year after year. So it's not like even if you have a healthy Peyton Manning, you're guaranteed to get anywhere in the playoffs. So, John, for those reasons, I think unless you can convince me otherwise, and unless Osweiler comes out and totally lays an egg next week, for example, then I think you have to stick with him, because otherwise you're almost guaranteeing yourself failure. And then the entire coaching staff, I think, gets cleaned out. Peyton Manning's gone, and the Broncos go back to being a complete disaster if they fuck this up going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. That's for sure. Really quick, Ben, before we go into our picks for this upcoming week, which everyone should certainly listen to and bet on, because Ben and I are both on a roll right now.
We are well on the north side of 500 here, especially lately. So you would have made a substantial amount of money had you been betting with us all year.
Absolutely. So, look, that's okay if you made a mistake and haven't been doing it, but get on now. Hop on the train, make some fucking money. Mm-hmm. Really quickly, are the Redskins a playoff threat to you, Ben? Because, man, Kirk Cousins has looked fantastic recently.
Man, I'll tell you what, I was there in person at FedEx Field when they I got there a little bit late to the game. I came in close to the end of the first quarter, and the game was already over by the time that I came and sat down. They decimated my Buffalo Bills, which was incredibly depressing to see. Not sure if that says more about the Bills and their just horrendous defense on Sunday, or more about the Redskins. John, I don't know if I would have said yes a week or two ago, but I think they are. I think it's the team that can win a first-round playoff game, quite frankly. I know we had said before that if a Seahawks or a Vikings come in to Washington to play this team in wild card weekend, that we think the Redskins might get smoked. I still think they'd probably get smoked by the Seahawks, but they could beat a Vikings team if they get the wild card, for example. I think they could potentially win a first-round playoff game. Their offense has come alive. They've got some great skill position players. They've got some great players on defense, especially on the front seven when they're playing well, and they seem to be playing well right now. As a team that's motivated, because no one expected them to be in this position. We certainly did not. I thought they would finish dead last in the NFC East. Instead, we thought that a 7-9 team might end up winning this division. They could end up at 9-7, or at the very 8-8. They're 7-7 right now, so they could have a winning record, which isn't too bad, even in that horrendous division. So yeah, I think they are a threat. I don't think they go to the Super Bowl. I don't think they make it all the way to the NFC Championship game, but they could potentially win a game, maybe two. I think they're a threat right now.
That's interesting. I don't. I don't think they're a threat. I just, look, like Kirk Cousins looks good sometimes. He looks very good sometimes. And look, he's definitely had a better year overall than anyone probably would have predicted. Okay. Except for their head coach, who, like I've said the last few weeks, deserves a ton of credit for what he did starting Cousins over RG3.
He might get balls of the year.
Yeah, oh yeah. Maybe we should come up with an award for that, because that hell of a, Jay Gruden, hell of a call right there. Yeah. But yeah, I just don't see it. Like if you're saying that the Seahawks are going to go into Washington here for a first round game, the Redskins have no chance. I'm sorry, I just don't think they have a shot there. If they're
draw Minnesota, I think they might have a shot.
Yes, because I'm not sold on Minnesota whatsoever. Right. So I think if Minnesota goes to DC, I think the Redskins definitely do have a solid shot of winning that game. I might even pick them there potentially, but I think against anyone else in the NFC, they do not have a chance. Maybe against the Packers if they were to face them in the next round, which isn't going to happen probably. Let's face it, but. I think that could be a matchup maybe they could win, like if it was in Washington, which it won't be. So yeah, I don't think I don't think they really have a shot to do any serious damage in the NFC. But nonetheless, a great story overall, Ben. That's for damn sure.
I think so. So it's time to move into our picks, John. Once again, if you have not been putting your money on the line, this is a great time to do it because we are on a hot streak right now. So you can certainly win some money here. And also, speaking of money, John and I will be playing in our Fantasy League's championship matchup. We have outlasted all of the other competitors in our league, as predicted and expected. So get ready for that. Follow the Justice League Fantasy Football League in Yahoo if you're interested in the results of that. We'll talk about it next week, of course.
I'm sure.
Speaking of the Redskins, John, the Redskins are getting 3 points in Philadelphia. So all hail the Redskins, John. My first pick. I say take the Redskins. They're going to give 3 points. Look, I think they win this game against the Eagles. The Redskins, as I said, are on a roll. The Eagles haven't looked awful. They didn't look so good on Sunday. But look, they came off a pretty good win against my Buffalo Bills the previous week. But I think this is the Redskins' time. If they're going to kind of put their own stamp on this division, kind of take control of it, this is the time they have to do it. I like the Redskins to win here. Bet Washington, all hail the Redskins in Week 16, John.
And fuck the Eagles. That's really that's the other end of that. So I'm thrilled with your pick there, and I certainly hope you're correct. I think you probably will be, especially with your track record recently, Ben. Look, my first game here is kind of an ugly one. That is certainly not going to be on the radar as one of the most intriguing games of the week. That's for damn sure. But I am going with the Houston Texans getting 4.5 points at the Tennessee Titans. Look, it's pretty simple, and we picked the lines this morning, and they knew that Marcus Mariota was not going to be playing in this game, yet the Texans were still getting 4.5 points. I couldn't believe it. I really could not believe that. So, look, if Mariota was playing, I would still be tempted to take the Texans. He's not, so I think this Texans defense, which has been playing extremely well over the last month and a half or so, last 2 months, will be too much for Tennessee's offense to handle. I say this every single week. I think I pick against Tennessee every single week, Ben. I really think I do. They are devoid of talent. The Texans are not a great team, but they do have some talent on that team. And I think their defense here can carry them to a win. Not only am I saying take the Texans getting 4.5 points, but I'm saying take them to win outright.
I like that pick. Speaking of ugly games, John, we got the Jaguars at the Saints. The Saints are 3.5-point favorites in this game. The Jaguars are the best 5-9 team that I think you're ever going to see in the NFL. John and I both love their offense. I was disappointed by their performance this past week. But I'm still high on the Jaguars, not so high on the Saints. I think that the Sean Payton era is coming to a close in New Orleans, so it feels like this is kind of the end of an era. I don't know if we're going to get a lot of passion out of this Saints team in the last couple games of the year. So this just feels to me on the fast track in New Orleans in the Dome. These receivers the Jaguars have are legitimate. I think they could potentially have a huge day. You're going to give the Jaguars 3.5 points. I like that against what could potentially be an unmotivated Saints team. Put your money on the Jaguars this week.
Okay. Yeah, I like that pick. I've been pulling for the Jaguars for the last 6 weeks since I predicted they thought they had a shot to win the division. I don't know if that's looking too great right now, but it's still I think it's possible, right? I don't think
it's mathematically still possible.
Yeah. And I mean, look, it's not like the Texans and the Colts have been blowing anyone's doors off. So, they could certainly lose out. So we'll see what happens. But I think you and I are certainly both rooting for the Jaguars. Ben, my second game here, and it's involving your Buffalo Bills that got waxed, it seemed like, this past week. A lot of people would say, well, wait a minute, why are you going to take the Bills here? Well, I'm saying, look, every team has a bad week, okay? The Bills are at home where, as you know, Ben, they play a lot better.
They do.
Ralph Wilson Stadium is some serious home field advantage. We've been there a couple times, my God. The Bills are giving 6 points to the Dallas Cowboys. The Bills are home. And I'm saying take the Bills, -6. Look, the Cowboys look pathetic right now on offense. I don't trust their quarterback situation. I just think the Bills' defense, while it hasn't been great this year, I think this is a situation where they could tee off on Dallas's offense here, especially.
I don't even know who the Cowboys' quarterback is right now.
Right.
I don't even know who the guy is.
Right, and especially the Bills playing at home. Right. Also, look, the Cowboys have absolutely nothing to play for right now, I mean, the Bills at least still have something to play for a little bit. I mean, I think they might still have an outside shot of sneaking in. I'm not sure. But regardless, that's a team. They're good, so they're going to have some pride. I feel like maybe the Cowboys have kind of slipped a little bit here. I just think this is a spot where the Bills have a nice, impressive win here. They seem to be a team that, 1 week they'll play kind of poorly, the next week they'll look extremely good. I think LaShawn McCoy will have a big game on the ground. The Dallas run defense is not good. So I'm saying pick the Buffalo Bills.
I like it. I support that pick, of course.
Of course.
My last one is going to be the Green Bay Packers are going to Arizona to face the Cardinals we just discussed. The Cardinals are 4.5-point favorites, and I say take the Cardinals here. I think they win, potentially by a touchdown, maybe even more than that. Look, the Packers, they looked better this past week. They put up 30 on the Raiders. But a good defense can slow them down. We've seen it this year on several occasions. And the Cardinals, as we mentioned, certainly have an incredible defense. But the thing that puts this over the top for me is the Cardinals can also outscore you while, in addition to having that incredible defense. And that, to me, is what gives them such a massive edge over the Green Bay Packers. The Cardinals were on the road in Philadelphia and put up 40 points to to the Packers 30 points on the road in Oakland. So I think even if Aaron Rodgers is able to, still lead the Packers to putting up 27-30 points, the Cardinals can outscore them at this point behind Carson Palmer. So at home, I like the Cardinals here. 4.5 is not enough to scare me away. I think they win this game by a touchdown. Take Arizona.
Yeah, I like that pick, man. I really do. My last game here will be the Kansas City Chiefs, Ben, against the Cleveland Browns. Now,
we pick against the Browns every single week as well.
We do, and this past week I picked against them.
As did I.
Yes, we both did. I apologize, and it was the right move, clearly, because they looked like complete shit, and Seattle was dominant as we expected. But here we go. The Kansas City Chiefs are giving away 12.5 points. It's not quite 14.5, but 12.5 is still a lot to the Cleveland Browns. The Browns have to travel to Arrowhead this week. Kansas City is home. Look, the Chiefs have looked absolutely amazing, Ben, the last 2 months, really, or so. They look like a well-oiled machine. Their defense has been dominant, and I have them in our fantasy league, so that's bad news for you this week, going against the Cleveland Browns when the Chiefs are at home. I looked in advance for that, by the way, so I do deserve some credit. I didn't get lucky there, but look, the Chiefs are playing for something. The Browns aren't. It seems like the Browns have kind of quit. The Chiefs are trying to cement their place in the playoffs and look to make a serious run, because I think they have to be viewed as somewhat as a contender for how well they are playing just solid football overall. And I just think that a team like the Chiefs that doesn't make many mistakes, if any, in a football game, going against a team like the Browns, which is turnover prone, having Johnny Manziel quarterback and just not being careful with the football, not having any skill really on the offensive end. I think this Kansas City defense will take advantage of that. We know that if you win the turnover battle in the game, you're most likely going to win the game. I think the Chiefs win that battle by maybe like 3 in this game, which will lead to at least 14 points for the Chiefs. I think this is going to be another blowout. Take Kansas City.
It's hard to argue with that. Look, I mean, well-coached team, certainly in Kansas City, against a coach in Cleveland who I think is probably going to be headed out the door when the season's over.
Absolutely. Ben, why don't you go ahead and introduce our last segment here, which is certainly one of our favorites.
Another staple here of the Guilty Pleasures podcast. We call this Last Call Life Advice. This sort of has its origins in the fact that John and I both love to drink and frequently find ourselves at late-night drinking establishments or house parties or other similar venues there. And we found over the years that people, both men and women of various ages, usually younger people, come up to us and ask us for advice in a variety of things: their career path, their education, their love life, any number of areas. We're not qualified by any stretch of the imagination to give this advice, but we've christened ourselves life experts, and so we will give it to you once again here on this episode of the show.
Damn right.
So, John, I'll keep mine pretty to the point, as has been commonplace now for the past few weeks on this show. It's healthy to view things in life as opportunities rather than responsibilities. For example, John and I both put a lot of work into the Guilty Pleasures podcast on a weekly basis, in addition to actually recording it every week. John's been doing a lot of work designing things on the graphic side. I put together outlines. We combine. We sort of there's our new business card, which looks fantastic.
Right there.
Of course, hit us up on Twitter. We'll send you one. We both work on articles for Cage Side Seats. We do other research to get ready for the show. So hours and hours of work go into doing this every single week. And sometimes if you're busy and have other things going on, it's easy to fall into the, oh my God, I've got to get this done for the podcast. This is on my to-do list. As opposed to looking at it from the perspective of, I have an opportunity to record a audio program with one of my best friends every single week and distribute it to people who can listen to us talk for 2 hours and enjoy it in the process. So that's a hell of an opportunity to have, and kind of an honor in a way, if you look at it that way. So if you have something like that, we all have to-do lists, we all have responsibilities, we all have things you have to get done, but look at them as opportunities, and in some cases, like the podcast, for example, as something that you should feel lucky to be able to do. So if you can do that, that'll take some stress off of your shoulders, I think.
That's great advice, man. And ditto, man. I feel the same way about this podcast. To know that we are making people happier throughout the week by doing this, I mean, it is incredible. It's a great feeling. Ben, my last call life advice this week is to confront big issues as they arise, as opposed to continuously pushing them away until it's too late. And I'm really referring to relationships here, Ben. If you're in a relationship with someone and there is a fundamental difference that you know you cannot compromise on, and that neither party will, then you need to have the strength and maturity to either end it or to address it. If you don't address these potential, relationship defining or ending problems when they arise, all it will do is hurt the other person in the long run if you know that you can't see yourself with that person for the long haul, for sure. So I'm saying here, be a mature adult. I've done this for sure, and it's certainly worked out for me. Be a mature adult and do the right thing by not leading someone on just because you want to avoid having a legitimate, serious conversation, Ben.
Yeah,
confront
that because they're unwilling to actually confront a difficult situation.
Right. Some people would rather string someone along for multiple years just because they're too scared to either A, break up with them if they need to, or talk about something very serious in a relationship. And that is beyond selfish. Yeah. That's one of the most selfish things you can do, especially if that other person thinks that this is something that's going to, be the real deal and last a lifetime. That's a terrible thing to do to somebody. So once again, confront issues as they arise. Instead of pushing them away, at least you'll have a chance, and you'll be fair to the other person as well.
I like that. That's good advice.
Thank you. So thank you to all of our listeners, fans, watchers now for tuning into episode 22 of the Guilty Pleasures podcast. We had a blast as always. Thank you so much for your continued support. Let us know what you thought about the episode. Tweet us at the GP Podcast. Be sure to tweet us if you have Scumbag of the Week recommendations for the future. Tweet us about anything. Email us if that's easy for you. Be sure now to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which will have videos of us doing the podcast every single week. And once again, just thank you for listening. Be sure to look out for our articles on Cage Side Seats, which we will tweet out to everyone to let you know that they are up and that we have written them. And they will be fantastic, as always, Ben. So anything else you want to say here before we go off the air?
Yeah, just check us out on iTunes, subscribe, watch for us on YouTube, and we will have an article up on CageSideSeats.com soon, the 10 things that WWE fans should ask for Christmas this year from the WWE. So that'll be up no later than Christmas Eve. Hey, once again, thank you so much for listening. Have a great holiday, everybody.
Have a great week, everybody.